what is the topic? We know that many companies, most of the companies actually probably also represented here, in the past years went through a cloud transformation. Maybe legacy software, maybe new startups, decided to move to the cloud and other cloud native technologies. And maybe that's a couple of years in the past now. But where did we move from there, right? Did we adopt anything more complex? Did we, find use cases for multi-cloud strategies, multiple cloud providers? Why would we do that? Or hybrid setups. Now there are new trends emerging around artificial intelligence and machine learning. How do we run those? Do we run them in the cloud? Is that actually meaningful to do? We'll learn about that. Before I go there, we are at Make. So I would like to introduce a little bit of Make to you. By the way, did you, come across Make? Do you know what we do, what the product is? If you can raise your hand just briefly, who knows Make? No? Okay. Thank you for that. Just for those who haven't heard about us, Make is a no-code development platform that people can use to build, automate, or integrate pretty much anything. So there are people and companies who use Make to just integrate tools together, email, Slack, and other things, kind of to get rid of manual labor. But there are also teams and companies who use Make to quickly prototype backends or build entire business applications. It's very visual, very nice to use. So if you haven't given a try, please come to make.com and give it a try. We would love your feedback. Today, we are going to spend 1 hour in a panel discussion. Feels long, but I think there is a lot of stuff to be discussed. Afterwards, we will go through your questions and try to answer them all. For that, we have Slido running. So at any point during the talk, feel free to just post a question or a remark on Slido, or upload one that somebody else has posted, and we'll see that on the screen. We have my wonderful colleague Nastya over there, who is our Slido moderator, so she'll be picking the most interesting or challenging questions for us and for the other panelists. And afterwards, there will be barbecue and beers outside, so I guess we'll have to suffer through those 75 minutes before we get to drink the beers. Okay, so maybe before we even start the panel, I would like to do a little bit of test here in the audience for ourselves, but also for you to see who is actually sitting next to you, right? Because we said, this is going to be an event about cloud. And we said there are certain people who might be interested. You want to network with somebody. So let's do a show of hands. Who is a software engineer or developer in the audience? Okay, that's like more than a half. SREs, DevOps, infrastructure engineers. Okay, cool. I see some people twice. That's great. That's true DevOps mindset. And the other roles, managers. Yeah, managers. Awesome. Another question. Who of you works with any public cloud? Awesome. AWS? Azure? Google? Ah, Google Camp over there. Alibaba? Anybody? Oh, interesting. Kiwi. Okay, so we can talk about that as well. And I have one more question. Oh, yeah. Who still uses bare metal? Oh, interesting. Awesome. And who works with who works with machine learning or artificial intelligence? Oh. Who are you guys? This is, the Google Cam, the AI Cam. Very, very interesting. Okay, cool. So thanks for that. We at least know who's in the audience. And, now let's get the show started. And I would like to kindly ask our panelists to join the stage. So we have Martin Damovsky, who's the cloud governance lead at Ataccama. We have Anton Getmanchuk, Sysops manager at Wrike. Martin Možnar, co-founder and CEO at vBoard, and recently also Kyla.ai. You may have expected Radim Tvrdoň, whose beautiful photo was on the invite. Martin is actually stepping in for Radim, but it's going to be awesome, trust me. Next, we have Honza Shimak, platform engineering team lead from Showmax. And last but not least, Miloš Vyletěl himself, principal engineer at Kiwi. Welcome. Great, guys. Please take a seat. I promised you 3 mics. We have only 2 mics because we decided to have one as a backup. So we will have to manage. Now, the challenge is a panel discussion with 5 panelists is going to be tough. And so I will have to be sometimes maybe a little rude to stop if people, go too much into the rabbit hole. Pardon me if I need to do that. Then you can pay back later over a beer. Guys, the first thing that I would like to ask you, people may not know, you or may not know the products or companies that you, work for or founded. Could you just briefly introduce yourself in 2 sentences? What you do and what is the product that you work on? Martin.
Just 2 sentences, right? Wow. Okay. First challenge. Hi, I'm Martin Damovsky. I'm from Ataccama. We do software quality or data quality software, data catalog, data management software.
Thank you. Amazing. Let's move on. Anton.
Hi, everybody. My name is Anton Getmanchuk. I've been working Wrike for 6 years. I'm managing operations team, and Wrike is a project management and collaboration platform. So we have big customers of all sorts, and also we have small teams and medium-sized companies.
Thank you very much. Martin, an interesting startup. I actually learned about you first when I read an article at lupa.cz in March, I think. And it struck me because of what you do. So if you could briefly introduce what you did and what you do.
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name is Martin, and I'm a co-founder of vBoard. And vBoard basically developed an AI knowledge assistant that is based on generative AI technology and that helps users to get the right answer when they need it without endless searching.
Great. Honzo. Showmax.
Thanks.
It's an interesting thing. You are, I think, not operating on the Czech market, but you have a dev center in Prague.
Yeah,
tell us more about what you do.
As you said, I'm Honza Shimak from Showmax. We are online video platform for Africa continent, so it's likely not familiar to you. And I'm coming from platform engineering team. And basically, we are providing, let's say, internal infrastructure or runtime environment to our developers and such. So that's all.
So people can imagine basically like Netflix, but for a very specific continent.
Yeah, exactly like that.
Okay, great.
And super excited to be here.
All right. And Miloš, I guess everybody knows Kiwi, but tell us about what you do at Kiwi.
Yeah, I do hope so. But just in case somebody doesn't, Kiwi is trying to be the ultimate travel application, web, whatever. And we're trying to make the flights approachable and affordable for everyone. My role in a Kiwi, my official title is principal engineer. I, am principal engineer for the platform team, trying to, broaden my scope a little bit. So working also with like a search and other teams. But I'm also, very knowledgeable about our infrastructure and also somewhat responsible for it.
Okay, great. Thank you. And while you have the mic, maybe we can actually start with the, first real question. And that is.
That's Alibaba, right?
We'll get that. We get to that. That's an interesting thing. But what is your tech stack at Kiwi? And we talk about the application stack, but also about the infrastructure stack and anything you think is important.
Application, there's usually a combination of Python application. Front end is some JavaScript. On the very far back end, we have C++ and Go. We do use some NoSQL databases. We use plenty of Redis, plenty of SQLs. We run almost exclusively on Kubernetes. There are a few exceptions, but there's a very, very legacy leftover applications. And we actually do hybrid cloud. We run on GCP mainly with the bare metal Kubernetes clusters on OVH. So I'm kind of in the middle of all those, 2 fields in here.
Great. I think Anton, you have the mic already in your hand, so maybe you can give us an overview of the same for Wrike.
Sure. Our stack is also usual, but Java, Java with PostgreSQL in Kubernetes. So we rely on a bunch of Redises, RabbitMQs, We have OpenSearch in product, Kafka. We have Service Mesh. We have 3 data centers in production.
Okay. Showmax.
Okay. I will start from ground up. So we are running on public cloud, especially AWS. And from infrastructure standpoint, most of our applications are based on Kubernetes. There are some relational databases, PostgreSQL based. Again, some kind of messaging like Redis, for example, and such. And the application is a mix of Ruby, Go, JavaScript. I would say a usual stack.
Okay, very usual stack. We worked, Kyla. I would be curious about that.
I think that I'll be one of the exceptions here because we completely run on bare metal as an on-premise solution. The base of our platform is running on also as Kubernetes and in Docker, and we also use obviously like SQL databases, vector databases, and all sorts of modern AI technologies and frameworks.
I guess the vector database is typically for like to store embeddings.
Exactly.
Which one do you use? I would be curious.
VV8.
Okay. Interesting. And Martin, how about Ataccama?
Yeah, Ataccama originally it was on-prem company. Now we support on-prem and cloud, both clouds, Azure and in the AWS. And from the technology stack, it's Kubernetes, Postgre database, and Java, Python front-end with some JavaScript. Nothing special there. It's quite usual, but what is unusual that the application itself is single tenant.
Single tenant.
Yes.
So you deploy basically like, copies of the application for every customer you have.
Exactly. You duplicate your problems, basically.
Exactly. We are going to actually get to that problem. Anton, I see you.
Yeah, I wanted to add that I forgot to mention we run on 2 clouds and on bare metal as well. We are multi-tenant.
Yeah. From the make standpoint, right? We did a big migration to cloud, let's say a year ago when we finished, and there is still like a bare metal version of Make called Integramat running, but now the new generation called Make is all AWS. When I say all AWS, that is the truth in most of the cases, but we also have customers, special customers who have, let's say, other requirements. So we have instances that run in Azure. It's not necessarily us operating them, but our mother company, Celonis. So we need to build it in a cloud agnostic way as well. Big Postgres investment. There is a lot of going on in our Postgres, RabbitMQ, of course, Kubernetes, Docker, Redis also in the mix. And what else would and Elasticsearch. That's kind of, those are the components. From the application standpoint, purely Node.js, TypeScript on the backend, and big Angular investment on the front end. So we are kind of very compatible here, right? I heard a little bit of Go, a little bit of C++, but really no Elixir. I know that you guys used Elixir in the past at Showmax a little bit. So I don't know whether
I'm not aware.
That predates you, I guess. Okay, cool. Thank you for that. Maybe what would be interesting, because I think that this is going to help us in some other questions down the line. Who are your typical customers, right? Because for Make, it's actually very broad. We have, single users, pretty much consumers, all the way up to large enterprises, and their needs are super different. And sometimes it's actually quite challenging to, pick the right solution for them in terms of where to run it, how to design the architecture. Tenancy is a problem. Who are your customers? Martina, you are holding the mic.
Our customers are usually big corporations, enterprise, especially in North America. I would say also energy, finance, and so on, and also public sector, of course. And that's what define the product and all the approaches regarding single tenancies. And
understood. Okay. Other guys, what would you say?
For example, for us, as I said, because we are online video platform, our customers are people that are watching their favorite series, films on their mobile phones, TV, set-top boxes. So this is it.
So consumers, pretty much.
Basically, end consumers.
Our customers are also broad variety. It's from 5-seat free accounts to we support more than hundreds of thousands of seats in account. So
That's quite
tenancy,
that's quite massive.
it's quite
Yes.
massive, and tenancy is an interesting topic to actually cover.
Mhm.
Okay, so at the very beginning, like 2 years ago, because VBoard is still a really early stage company, we are focused on enterprise customers. Yeah, but that was actually a reason why we've moved to on-premise solution, because the consumption in the cloud was too extreme, and it drove us to switch it to on-premise. So at the moment, our clients are usually like SMEs, SMBs, yeah, companies with companies between 100 and 500 employees.
Okay, and Miloš, in case of Kiwi, I would assume it's mostly consumers, but is that really true?
Not really, actually. Kiwi is actually bigger in B2B and B2B2C, but we're trying to grow, to in the B2C business, trying to really sell to the end customers. But we have that's why we have web, that's why we have mobile applications, obviously. But historically, Kiwi grew up really being like a feed for other meta searches.
Maybe what I would be really curious about is, you said you have a number of different environments, right? Different clouds. You also have a bare metal. When you made that decision to adopt, some of them, what were the reasons? Was it just organic? It's like, hey, look, we, I don't know, need to scale, so let's pick, the first cloud we like, or were there some, arguments behind that made you choose what you chose?
Well, that is actually an interesting question. There are many reasons, and none of them are technical, actually. For instance, the move to GCP came up from the fact that we have been way too small customer for Amazon, and we didn't really get the support that we wanted, or we felt like we needed, or we were supposed to get. Whereas, Google being smaller cloud, we have been, mid-sized customer and had the better attention. Move to, for instance, OVH from Hetzner was somewhat technical, mostly because of better, hardware, better networking, and etc. Move from OVH to GCP was mostly driven by the fact that there was a severe hardware shortage, throughout the world, and we couldn't scale. So it was business reason really. We needed to be able to scale, because as soon as, like, obviously, Kiwi selling flights was severely impacted by the COVID, right? Like, our sales went literally almost to zero. But after things started to pick up, after the restrictions started to becoming less and less severe, people started to fly like crazy, and we need to scale. And for that, we needed to be able to scale, and we couldn't do that efficiently where we were. So we made the decision to move to cloud where we knew we could scale.
That is interesting. So you would say that would date back to like 2021, so not so long ago, because that's when the pandemic was kind of over, right?
Pretty much, yes.
And before that, you were not really like big cloud shop.
Well, we always been big cloud shop, but we used to run applications that have been scalable in cloud, because if you can scale up and down, you save a significant amount of money, because obviously cloud is more expensive than having a bare metal. If you cannot scale, it makes sense to run on bare metal, because you pay fixed amount of money. But at some point you still need to get more servers. If you cannot get them, you need to move somewhere, right? So that was mainly the decision.
Yeah, for us it was mostly about actually becoming a global product, right? Because Integromat originally it was a global product, but still hosted from Prague, and we wanted to basically move closer to where the customers are, and the cloud enabled us to do that easier. And that's why we went for AWS and actually launched, European presence and US presence. That was, some of the reasoning behind.
Do you really need to move the whole stack closer to the customer?
In our case, we do, because we are a workflow execution platform, right? And you actually need to get the data where the user or the customer has the data and process them so that you are fast. So that is the reason. But not I guess not all companies would have the same need.
Well, I mean, I guess it comes with the size. I mean, we obviously most of the content you can deliver via CDNs, right? And
True.
CDN needs to be closer to the customer, but the actual logic of the application can be anywhere essentially. And I was actually making this joke not too long ago, I guess yesterday. It looks cool when it takes a little bit longer to look for the flight. People think you care more.
Interesting. Okay, guys, what's your point of view, right? What was your decision to actually adopt your particular stack? And I would keep VBoard maybe towards the end, because that's a slightly different. Martine.
Yes, as I said, Ataccama, it was originally on-prem company, and we were just producing the software. We were making the software and putting on the customer's head. You have it, enjoy, install it, maintain it. But then one customer came to us and, hey, Ataccama, we don't have any DevOps people, any technical people. We don't have any data center. Can you please run it for us? And that was the time when we opened first AWS account and opened this, let's say, Pandora's box, because then everything has changed.
Okay, and how long ago that was?
It was something like 5 years ago.
5 years, okay.
But then we had only AWS. But some customers came, hey, we don't like AWS because of Amazon. You should have Azure. Okay, now we have also Azure.
Do you have customers who don't like Azure?
To be honest, I don't know. I know that some customers don't like AWS because of Amazon and how it works at Amazon. When steps in some markets, it destroys everything, and they don't want to support potential future competitor.
I see. So basically, your need was driven. So you said, okay, we will choose a cloud, but then you were forced to go to another one because of the customers.
Exactly. And now we are in the mode where we also deliver our platform, our software to customer, and also we operate the software in the platform for customers.
I see.
Which is different approach because we have to operate it, monitor it, SLA, security, and it's completely different approach, and it harms.
And so I know that Showmax had a slightly different motivation. Could you tell us about that?
Okay, so for us, I think the main reason going to cloud was to be more closer to our customers, because I think you can imagine that providing services from Europe to customers living in Africa, especially in South Africa, is really hard. So that was the reason why we moved to AWS, because AWS, I guess, was the first cloud provider with a data center present in Johannesburg. So this is our story. Next, I would guess the most crucial reason was to be, let's say, efficient in terms of dynamically react to our workload, which is really hard to accomplish running on-prem, because usually you have some servers and it's not easy to get rid of them just for some hours and then reclaim them back. So this is it. And the last thing, let's say, or the third thing on the priority list, that we wanted to focus our engineering on things that actually make sense in our business. And then, let's say, purchase services that are not such important to us and leverage as a service solutions, and let's say focused our engineering on things that are really crucial to our business. So let's say it's a combination, but I guess that the first motivation was to improve user experience. It means specifically decrease the latencies and provide the service actually from the continent itself.
Yeah, sometimes data locality also can be a problem, right? For example, Make has a lot of customers in Israel, and the problem is that basically AWS is not in Israel, Azure is not in Israel, even though they promised they would be, right? And it's actually fairly challenging, so we resort to running on-prem installations there. Okay, Anton, briefly.
Sure. So to brief you, we started this on-prem company like 16 plus years ago. Probably that was the default choice those times. I think cloud journey started maybe 10 years ago with maybe first CDN provider, it was AWS. And next step we moved our attachment and storage to AWS. So we start using S3 and Elastic transcoding feature to convert audio and video. And since then, we opened the European data center because of data locality and GDPR. And probably also 4 years ago, we started the GCP data center. It was our option to scale. But in fact, on-prem seems to be cost efficient. And let's say if you compare the target CPU utilization on your servers, you could reach, let's say, somewhat decent numbers on-prem. with some overcommit, and but keeping on each VM, let's say some like reasonably low CPU usage, let's say 1/3. But in cloud, without reworking everything, let's say moving to some cluster solution that could help you take advantage of over provisioning, let's say Kubernetes, or I don't know, running hypervisors, your like mean CPU usage in cloud could be lower, right? So
less cost efficient, basically.
Probably yes, but for us, GCP is heavily used by many departments. So each ops capable department has probably some presence in GCP. So I would say it's a way to unblock any POC and also any new features. So let's say we started 2 years ago doing a global layer. It's a lightweight layer on top of Wrike data centers, and we started it in GCP.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of cloud native.
Understood. Now, from a slightly different side, right? Martina, you mentioned that you basically started as an enterprise company,
right,
and that kind of drove your decision to go bare metal. Tell us more about that, because it's fairly different from what we have seen.
It is, yeah, and I would say that there is no like definitive answer what's better, and it always depends on a use case, yeah. And we have a really specific use case, and we are an early stage company that really need to monitor its expenses, yeah. And our use case is that we use LLM models, yeah. And I believe that cloud could be feasible, yeah, and more you could actually save money with the traditional stack, yeah, but not with us, because you know when you want to scale like some, I don't know, CRM, project management system, or whatever, you can use cloud to scale your business very easily. But when you run a large language model, it actually doesn't matter if you use the model for 1 customer or for 1,000 customers. And that's why we decided that it makes more sense for us to purchase a bare metal and create our own on-premise infrastructure. And even though we do have customers here in the Czech Republic and in the US, it's still we save a lot of money in terms of or when we compare it with the cloud computing, yeah, because, and again, for a small startup, we cannot afford like to reserve the resources in the cloud, because and to achieve in order to achieve better pricing, yeah. So we were facing a lot of different problems with price predictions as well as instances availability, and that was all the reasons that we decided to go on-prem.
I guess in your case, it's probably not like the typical general purpose instances, but you are heavy on GPU, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, we still do have we still do use the cloud for specific tasks, but not for operating our platform. Yeah, we use AWS, for example, for large language model training, but it's not that demanding in terms of computational power, because we only retrain a Jupyter file, which is yeah, it's not very heavy, and it costs between $800 and $1,300 every quarter. Yeah, so it's really affordable for us.
So that's the training part, but then when you want to run it so that people can query it, that's where the problem is.
Exactly.
Do you, for example, see any issues if you have international customers? And I don't know where your hardware runs, but you said it's somewhere in Czech Republic, so I guess it's some server hosting here.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It could become a problem in the future. Yeah, but it's a problem of future me.
I see.
You know, because at the moment we obviously, yeah, we need to think forward and think in the future, and what can help us, and for small companies, it's always like evaluation of the risk and resources that you actually have available. Yeah, so yeah.
Well, yeah.
If I may, do you buy the operations of your bare metal as a service? Or do you have own people that have on-call 24/7, that have second server next to their bed, and in the night they are able to replace it? Or
no, we actually are running a hybrid, maybe because but 90% of the operation is running on our own bare metal. Yeah, but we do have a mirror of our platform on AWS, but it's activated only when there is some kind of unexpected overload or something like that.
Mm-hmm. One interesting topic overall are migrations, right? Specifically, if a company started, in one mode and then moved to another, and no matter whether it was, bare metal first and then, cloud or vice versa, it typically is a challenge. And we know it firsthand because we are actually still in a phase of migrating our users from the legacy Integromat platform to Make, and it's taking a year, right? And we need to be careful not to lose the customers. But also from the technical perspective, and mostly there, right? You can typically choose between two approaches, and that is just lift and shift. You take whatever you are running on your bare metal on-prem, and then somehow mimic that in the cloud. But that typically doesn't end up well because the architecture is not really cloud native, right? And you end up running pretty much on-prem workloads in the cloud. So you need to re-architecture, you need to re-platform, and that's quite an investment. Make chose to do partial replatforming, so we still run certain legacy components like NFS, for example, in the cloud because it was so widespread that it was not practical to remove it, and it will be removed later on. But I would be curious if you went through a migration, right? And we heard number of stories that we started as an bare metal company or on-prem company, and then we moved to cloud. What were some of those difficult architectural considerations that you had to take into account when you were doing the move, or did you just lift and shift? Whoever wants to pick it up first.
Yeah, I can start. Let's imagine the on-prem software, and then one customer would like to have it in cloud. How does it work usually? Some part of company starts with migration everything to cloud, and then there is another customer and another customer and another customer, but still the rest of the company lives and lives in on-prem. So we are today in this kind of crazy state where we support on-prem and also cloud, and we try to fight and move it more to the cloud, but still keep some compatibility with on-prem. And
how do you do that? Because there are probably techniques how you can do that. Maybe build it on Kubernetes, and it doesn't matter where you run it.
At the moment, we try to be just Kubernetes ready, nothing else, Kubernetes and RDS, which can somehow be installed also on-prem. But there starts to be new challenges, new problems, like we would like to use some AI services from Azure, OpenAI, some better tooling for scaling, for, I don't know, security. And that's not exactly available in the on-prem. So yeah,
there are companies who would say differently, but anyway, I get you. Makes sense. So sounds like mostly like a lift and shift type of strategy.
Lift and shift, and also I would say we are turning the company towards the cloud, because this engineering and all the people still lives in the on-prem world, and we need to teach them what is the cloud, how it works, how we can use it in business, in sales, and all these areas. And yeah, it's a long journey, and it's not one-day job.
Sure, exactly. We have the same experience, guys. Somebody else would any stories to share?
I will continue. So for us, it was an adventure, I would say. And honestly, when we started, first off, we wanted to do a true cloud migration transition to a shiny, bright cloud future. But during the adventure, we realized that it's not actually feasible to rework whole our platform. So we ended up in, let's say, something like a lift and shift for something that actually works pretty well, and do the transition, complete reworking for things that are not actually, let's say, cloud ready, I would say. But I should say that even when we were on-prem, we were running orchestration system called Nomad. I don't know whether you are familiar with, but it's like a real lightweight Kubernetes. So actually, our initial state wasn't so bad, and let's say we were slightly ready for the let's say dynamic environment. So yes, that's it. But actually during the project we must have slightly changed our goal, because otherwise it would be a really long project, and because product wants its features.
Exactly. You can't just stop development for 2 years.
You have to find let's say a win-win solution that everyone would be happy. But yeah, right now I would say we are running in a state that it's pretty efficient, I would say, because it turns out that not everything that we actually wanted to rewrite actually needs to be rewrite, because it's running efficiently, even though it's not so efficient as we initially wanted. But why?
It's good enough, basically.
Definitely, it's good enough from, let's say, performance and actually price perspective, because at the end of the day, everything is about price for runtime. So let's say this is our, let's say, performance measurement, how costly each service is, and let's say this metric, I would say, drives our decision what we should focus on next.
We'll get to cost shortly. Okay. That's actually the next topic, and that's going to be interesting. Miloš, do you have a migration story?
Well, we have embraced migration in Kiwi. We are in a constant state of migration, I feel. Ever since I joined, we've been migrating from one place to another. I mean, we have been in a good state in the beginning because we've been at least using Docker, you know, in the sense that we've been using Rancher 1, which was Docker Compose based orchestration. So at least the applications have been written in Docker. So there was some kind of abstraction. But then, you know, migration from the AWS to GCP, you know, we tried to build it like a greenfield. So the whole thing was terraformed, you know, everything was nice and shiny for like 2 weeks. Then we kind of messed it up anyways. But we moved to Kubernetes. So, you know, we need to rewrite all the manifests to the Kubernetes manifests. We need to migrate from RDSs to Cloud SQL eventually, you know, when we are moving from SNet to OVH, we went again from you know, Rancher 1, Docker Compose to Kubernetes. Some, you know, Lambdas have been moved to Cloud Functions and whatnot. It's just like, I think we're migrating all the time.
And why would you migrate from AWS to Google Cloud? You mentioned that you did that. Was that cost driven? Was there some other reason?
Well, as I said, we mainly were lacking, you know, support or attention. We didn't know the roadmap. We didn't know what to focus on. Google obviously also gave us better deal. As if you are a new customer, you get like you know, some credits and stuff. You know, obviously it was beneficial at the time. But again, it's mostly driven by business. Like these migrations are not necessarily technical, but it also opens opportunity to deal with some tech debt. And you know, being on a, you know, Docker Compose based orchestration proved to be dead end. So we needed to move to someplace else. You know, Kubernetes, you know, was at the time, and it still kind of is the thing everybody uses. So we did that. And actually we are planning another migrations because, you know, we obviously we moved at the time when the multi-tenancy of the Kubernetes clusters was really in the beginning and we couldn't use it, but yet we didn't really want to have everybody from engineering accessing every single deployment. So we built essentially cluster per team or per tribe or whatever the structure is, right? Now we're operating 60 plus clusters, which is pain in the ass, obviously. So we need to shrink it. So we're planning to move them to like a multi-tenant environment, like a shared clusters.
Just 60 clusters?
Well, you know, it's
that's little or a lot. So in your that's little in your math. Okay.
Yeah, it really depends on the customer. Like I mean, our customer are essentially just 400 give or take engineers in the company for the platform team, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. How many CPU cores you have in total in Kubernetes?
I was looking it up. I think it was right around 24,000, 25,000. Like on average, I believe. Is it correct, Robert? Yeah, somewhere around that. I don't remember exactly, but yeah, that sounds about right.
How do you justify a constant state of migration to your business and to your product team? Because I can imagine, you know, it can be a hard conversation. It's like, dude, again,
you know,
I need a new feature.
It's like, all about ROI. You just slap some number, you just make it look good, and you know, you get the buy-in, and that's how it works. And you can actually make anything look good. Like depends how you kind of mold the numbers, right? And I mean, if you really need to make it look good, you just kind of count in the human costs, right? And you say, hey, this migration is going to save me 2 full man days, and this is this much, and they're like, yeah, that's the way to go. Let's do it.
Well, typically, and I think one of you mentioned this, build versus buy decision. I think it was Honza. Like, whether you just buy some service that you would love to build, but it's not really your business, right? Like, we built a CMS at some point, but then we realized probably we are not a CMS company. Let's focus on our primary business value, right? That can be a similar solution. Sometimes people have this feeling, oh no, we'll build it because it's gonna be cheaper. But then you actually sink, a team for 6 months. The money is not visible, but you actually burn it, and you could have done something else.
Yeah, we don't build anything in-house anymore. Like back in the day, some people thought it's maybe a good idea, and we still have some legacy tooling that has been built in-house, and with the mind, it's with the idea that we're going to actually sell it to customers, right? But that's not ever going to happen because you should need to focus on a business, and the business of Kiwi, at the moment is mostly selling flights, right? So building anything else is just waste of time. So whatever we can source it, whatever we can have managed, we do, because it's more efficient.
Any reactions to any of what was said?
I think it's pretty good sizing.
Cool. No, there was one more question I actually wanted to ask you guys, and that is, no matter what infrastructure, what platform you adopt, there is still some need to manage it, right? You can buy managed services, but still somebody needs to admin that. How do you manage your infrastructure? Do you have a platform team? Do you have a different approach for that?
I can continue. I don't mind.
Yeah. Okay.
We tried
but then hand it over to
we
somebody
tried
else.
many things. When I joined Kiwi, we used to have a DevOps team. It was essentially like a middleman between all the, let's say, the infrastructure and the developers. Then we moved to SRE, and I think that I was only one SRE, or maybe 2 of us. I think Marek is here. I think you had the same title as I did, and that was quickly like disbanded, and we moved to platform. Essentially, we have a team that's pretty much like taking care of the whole platform as well as SRE. So we're operating also we are responsible for the production outages and whatnot, and that works. Well, I don't want to say well. It works. It's challenging. It's really broad scope. We have to manage many services.
40 clusters.
And I'm not talking about
60,
just the infrastructure side of it or the cloud side of it, but also the application services. Because then at the end, it's always networking or something, so you get woken up.
Yeah. Okay. How about the others? Because this is an interesting topic.
Okay, so let's say I started as a DevOps within a DevOps team. Right now, we are called a platform engineering team.
What's the difference?
There is no different. It's just about the title, because the same bunch of people around me looking after the services. But actually, the change is that we are enjoying a state that we don't have to look after servers, physical servers, which are pretty hard to manage, I would say. So, and actually, who likes restarting servers, dealing with BIOS upgrades because of security issues and so on and so forth. So I would say that the term platform engineering reflects the state that we are focusing on higher level of the stack. We are basically purchasing the infrastructure, hardware infrastructure, and let's say we are enjoying running higher level services, as I said, like Kubernetes, databases, and other things. And I think this is the major change. It's not about the title, about whether we are called SREs, which is super fancy, or platform engineering.
That's the Google way of calling that role,
and so on. But it's about the actual work, and whether people actually are enjoying what they are doing on a daily basis, and how much they are solving during their own calls. And actually, I can recognize pretty much difference between the previous on-prem state and the current, let's say, cloud era.
And you would say the current one is better for you from the operational perspective?
Yeah, definitely. From the operation perspective, it's much better, because from my experience, hardware is a pain always.
Yeah,
never ending.
Martina, by the way, was that a Be Real? that you took the picture now? Yeah, okay, I thought so. Okay, platform teams. Any other thoughts on that?
Oh, it was just a question that if you were really upgrading the BIOSes, that's amazing. I never heard of anybody doing that.
I just like to add that again, it depends on the size of the company. Yeah, but we know that we definitely would need to use some kind of managed services. At the moment, we use our own. Yeah, everything's deployed on our own architecture and infrastructure, and so and again, it's all about the assessment of the risk and your resources, and that we took the risk, but we understand that as we scale, that we would need to use managed services in the future, and there's no better feeling than when you click new NVIDIA 8100 into your own rack. Yeah, so I believe that this is something that kind of brings a little joy into our
with a physical sensation of just
exactly.
slotting it in. Okay, interesting. How large is your team actually? Because that's you said you are a fairly early startup, so I guess it's not
Right.
like a huge company.
Yeah,
if you can disclose
we
that.
currently have 14 people. Yeah,
in engineering.
In engineering. Yeah, and yeah, 4 other in operations and business development. Yeah, so we are still again a really small team. Yeah. Sorry.
How many servers was the question?
Servers? We do on 2 servers only. Yeah, at the moment.
Two physical.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's manageable. I was imagining
that is a manageable. No.
20 racks full of hardware,
no.
and then the poor guy who has the on-call duty just swapping hard drives.
I was just about to say that 2 servers is fun. We used to have. I mean, actually, for one, I come from a telco background. I was playing with servers. I was living in a data center. We had it in the building. I do miss it. But in Kyiv when I joined, we have I think 850 servers from Hetzner. And you wouldn't really want to change hard drives on those. It was
no, you don't.
So maybe when you grow to that degree, you may reconsider, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we know that this is a solution for only some time of a period. But on the other hand, we still gonna need to be able to offer an on-premise solution to our customers, because we deliver a knowledge assistant that you can simply imagine our solution as a ChatGPT, but for companies with their own data, but with a maximum data privacy and security. And basically having our own servers or our own on-premise architecture and infrastructure enables us to create competitive advantage, because companies don't want to send their sensitive company information through OpenAI servers and help them to train next GPT 5, 6, 7, whatever. Yeah, and even though OpenAI promised to improve their privacy policy, I don't believe that not many companies, except maybe from Česká spořitelna, that enabled their employees the use of ChatGPT. They just don't want to do that. Yeah, and they want to have their own data on their own solution.
I know that Miller said that everybody hates Azure, but actually Azure is Microsoft invested massive amount of money into OpenAI, right? But what we are hearing, most of that was actually in Azure credits, and that also gave them the opportunity to actually run OpenAI in Azure and build a service around that. And privacy is actually something that they really offer on top of that. So I think that can be also over time a tough sell. Miloš, you mentioned that you use, I think, Azure OpenAI, don't you?
We do
can you take the mic, please?
Yeah, we do use Azure for maybe 4 weeks now because
I see.
of OpenAI, obviously.
GPT-4.
Yeah. Took a little while to get on the list, but we're there.
We have a new endeavor in that as well. It's quite interesting. Unfortunately, we can't disclose much about it.
I could also add that, let's say OpenAI, if you use programmatic access, they promise according to terms not to use your data for training. But we also found out that Azure offers probably better terms actually, but just being a proxy between you and OpenAI. This could be a reason for you to look into Azure, but they have long waiting list for
Helps to be a
GPT.
bigger company for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about cost, because there has also been a lot of questions already from people who registered for the event. It's like, how do you manage cost, right? Because cloud probably can become a huge black hole for money, right? You open up AWS console, you log in, say hello, and you owe them $1,000, pretty much something like that. And so how do you go about managing cost? Most of you used cloud for years, right? It means that probably you might be past that initial hype. It's like, oh yeah, it's ultimately scalable. Let's add more resources because we can always scale up. And then the bill comes, and you're like, dude, right? We started, of course, proactively managing cost as well, some time ago. But there was a period of time where basically, that's not your problem to solve, right? Your problem to solve is stability, scalability, reliability, and then you solve the money. But eventually you need to move there because it can become very quickly very expensive. And it's not obvious how to design the infrastructure correctly, because the cost models in the cloud typically are very complex, right? I have a fuck up to share. We used something called Kinesis Firehose in our architecture, right? You're smiling, so I'm curious whether you had the same experience. It basically is like a data pump, right? It's a pipeline that gets a pile of data from one place to another, and they bill you for the volume that you pump through. But they are very smart. They round it up to 5 kilobyte blocks, and if you send messages that are smaller, you still pay for 5 kilobyte blocks. So we had a situation where basically we sent, I think, like, what was it? Maybe 100 gigabytes, but we actually were charged for 3 terabytes of data. And that gets expensive very quickly, and just because you read the documentation wrong, right? So there are some of those drawbacks there. And
it's a good thing that somebody actually read the documentation, because from my experience, people don't do that. They usually just do things, and then things happen. We had the similar BigQuery query that cost us $5,000, right?
Oh, just one query. Nice. Was it worth it?
No, of course not.
I could maybe start with budgeting. So my experience will be primarily GCP, because I hate AWS. Because everything, right, but you probably know, right? So we do have, for each project, we put it in a certain folder. We have budget owner for each project and folder. And we do have technical team, like ops capable team, right? So first know-how is read documentation, right? If you don't want to run into cost issues. Second, plan and forecast your budget per project and track any differences. So we do it with FP&A on monthly cadence, but also, yeah, I do it basically every day. So I every day checking if we are going in whole GCP more or less without issues, and then the rest is delegated to either ops team or budget owner.
Mm-hmm.
So we have 5 ops teams in Wrike.
Okay. Do you use any sort of alerting or budget limits on resources in the cloud, so that you cross a certain degree, at least we all said to you that you are doing something wrong?
Yeah, I think that we were in the past we were maybe a little bit less aware of our cost trends. But since then, we probably implemented all best practices, meaning we have budget hours, we have good projections. We probably already applied all possible optimizations. So maybe an advice to keep track of your average, same or median CPU usage across your fleet. Check if you have commitments. You could, they have beta feature. I think it's in a roadmap. I hope it's not under NDA. That you will be able to cancel the commitment soon.
We'll delete it from the recording if it's
Nice.
sensitive.
And I would say GCP is pretty much capable of having the visibility for you. You could sync the detailed billing to BigQuery, right? You could check it in Data Studio. And also one know-how is actually there is nothing that tracks the SQ price in GCP. So you don't have a history. So my know-how is to basically save the SQ price because you don't know if price changed just yesterday or not.
Interesting. A question related to that: do you think that engineering teams should know what is their cloud cost, or do you expose that to your teams? Because we are at a state where we are not yet doing that, but we are about to start doing that, because people need to know that certain things that they implement may be implemented in a way, especially in a cloud environment where they are actually just doing the same, but they are twice more expensive because they do more I/O and stuff like that, right? So I would be curious, what's your approach? You've been adopting cloud for a longer time.
I would probably continue. So we started doing that. So with Anton Czekasa, he's in the hall. We using BigQuery and we using Data Studio to make some reporting, and thus it's enables us to provide the like our internal customers with any visibility they want.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Other reactions or best practices?
I would say that I totally agree with Anton, because I do believe that let's say budget ownership that's spread across all teams that are running their workloads on basically on it doesn't matter whether it's cloud or on-prem, but basically when there's a team that's running some workload, basically that's workload incurs some cost, and unless the team is owner of the budget, it's really hard to track the expenses and to somehow encourage people to think about the cost aspect of their work. So we are trying to go this way, that even platform engineering team or infrastructure team, developers should be responsible for their portion of the budget, and they should be aware how much they spend. And when they want to run something new, or they want to scale up something, let's say significantly, they should think upfront what the cost of the new or improved solution would be, and they should, let's say, negotiate, let's say, the new increase with let's say with finance manager internally. So I do believe that this can catch situations like you described, that likely somebody didn't notice that, let's say, there is some catch about the usage of the service, and this could, for example, increase the price unexpectedly, for example. So this is it. And I wanted to say that it's totally true that in clouds, you pay for each keystroke, basically. But on the other hand, because you pay for everything, your visibility into the structure of the cost is quite decent. So if you want, or if you need, you can go quite deeper into the structure, and you can, I would say, perfectly understand what part of the infrastructure platform is the most expensive, and whether it's, let's say, comparable to your business income. Maybe it is, so it's okay. Maybe it isn't, and then you know where to focus your engineering time or money, actually, to be more efficient. So it's not like I woke up in the morning and all of a sudden I had a feeling that most likely this service is causing the most cost. So let's
because you see that
because I like it, but it's based on the specific data. And funny thing is that financial data is a language that's understandable throughout the company. Engineers understands, managers understands, finance understands. So it's like a common language that's pretty easy to share your let's say your requirements or ideas, and you can get support immediately, because there is a let's say a finance impact.
Okay. And I will pause you there. We are approaching the top of the hour that was meant for the discussion. Before we move to Q&A, one question that is totally interesting is, can you share maybe like a major screw up that you that you experienced throughout your adoption of cloud, be it cost management, be it architecture, be it anything, because those are typically the biggest learnings. Like at Make, when I joined, I learned the most through incidents, right? You go and actually you attend incidents, and that tells you a lot about gaps in the architecture and how things actually work, because you need to find out where to fix the problem. I would be curious about some of yours if you have anything that is disclosable. Yeah, okay. Martina, maybe you want to, or
I'll start. Actually, it's going to be pretty quick. I was building the network mostly, between the cloud and the bare metal, and we didn't have any sandbox, so I was testing everything in production. You can imagine how many times I screw things up, right? But the good thing is that you can actually fix it most of the time pretty quickly. Yeah, of course.
The remark was
actually,
you are still at
me,
Kiwi, if you didn't hear. Okay, Martina.
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest fuck ups was that we didn't like look through it at the very beginning. Yeah, that we kind of maybe we also did a problem with reading the documentation, that because we are always very surprised how much AWS is actually billing us. Yeah, and it was nothing compared to our predictions. So maybe we've done something wrong, but either way, yeah, you always need to work with the worst case scenarios, and that's what we have not done. Yeah, so I think that was one of the biggest learnings for us. Yeah, to really understand our use case and how our people actually will be using our service, and that we are not a traditional technology company, and we use different kinds of cloud computing, and we should react on it otherwise. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, in Ataccama, I remember a couple of fuck-ups. The most expensive was at my beginning, when I found out that we paid $20,000 every month for disks and it was useless.
For disks that
just for
did
disks.
nothing, were useless.
Yes.
Okay.
It was because somebody increased the disk and then set up every hour backups, which was according to SLA, but somehow there was some miscommunication and we didn't know what should be the expected costs. If we were new and to the cloud, we were new to Ataccama, and when you start with cloud, you don't know what you can expect. That just calibrate the threshold, and
yeah, it was there. It's probably right.
Yeah. It's probably right. It's
okay.
The customer pays, and it's probably right. But
that's
then
an expensive one. You can get a lot of developers for that money if you sum it up over a year, right?
Yeah. But of course, there is one thing which you said in AWS and in Azure, it's quite difficult to get a real-time pricing data. You have the data with 1 hour delay, 2 hours delay, or one day, or 2 days of delay, which makes the budgeting almost impossible or useless, because you receive alert, yeah, your bill is a little too late.
Understood. Yeah, I think Anton and then Honza also wanted to say something. So Anton, go next, and then Honza will wrap it up, and then we'll move to Q&A.
Yeah, I probably want to talk not about our FOCA, because we have staging environment, right? So how could we end up like in such a situation? It's a joke. Just we couldn't probably disclose that. I learned a lot from recent GCP outage, like when they had
the
request 9 Paris under the river, right? So, and what I learned is that actually, if you notice that Frankfurt was not available for a long time, but it's a different region, come on. And there are multiple global services which were also affected. And by the time I was thinking, okay, you have guys multi-regional object bucket, right? It's like kind of multi-regional, but to which extent is multi-regional? So the outcome was not to rely, first of all, on a single region. Like you should have some plan B in cloud that's like 100%. And second thing, think about having backups also somewhere else, right? Because multi-regional bucket could not be available, and it actually was the case for some other service, but not the object storage.
There's an interesting thing that we experienced some months ago when Datadog, which is our monitoring solution, had a global outage for about 24 hours. And that caught us in the middle of a deployment. And basically, you go deploy, and we have a very complex deployment orchestration. And in the middle of the deployment, we ended up blind. So you end up in a state that's inconsistent. You have no or very basic monitoring, and you are kind of screwed. And the only thing that is left to you is kind of, cross yourself and wait. And luckily, right, that actually panned out well. We had some backup monitoring, but not as comprehensive. So the learning there is cloud can fail, SaaS can fail, and if you rely on it 100%, you may fail. Yeah, Honzo, any closing thoughts from you before we move to QA?
I'm thinking. I think definitely I can't think of any, let's say, fuck up that I would share with you. But
you can't, or you, and there was none.
Definitely, I'm not aware of anything that would be worth sharing,
Mm-hmm.
because not that I'm bent, but nothing significant. But definitely, after we've moved to cloud, we were surprised how resource greedy our let's say applications or services are running their own initial on-prem configuration. Even before that, we are pretty efficient running on-prem. So that was like a huge surprise.
Mm-hmm.
That let's say our initial estimates are completely out of the range. But it was due to the fact that quite cheap on-prem infrastructure was hiding some, let's say, significant inefficiencies. So we had to react quickly to reduce the price. So I would say this was something unpleasant, because the prices ran through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, when we migrated the major workloads on cloud. So let's say this is something that users or companies that are moving to cloud or that are preparing to the operation should be aware of, that maybe on-prem would be in terms of resource efficiency quite different.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Now let's move to Q&A, and let's try to be quick. So if there is somebody who is passionate about that question, please take it and answer. The first one we see on the screen is: did you make an external audit of your infra from the perspective of efficiency and cost optimization? Did anybody do an external audit?
Kind of yes. We have a ISV who's reselling our clouds, and they are doing it for us. In a sense, we have some anomaly detections from them and also some recommendations, but mostly we actually do it in-house. I'm mostly doing it myself.
Okay.
We cooperate quite closely with AWS, and they are giving us services like architecture reviews and all these things. And during that, we also try to investigate whether the costs are the cost usage is efficient. We can save some money, and it's not really external, but it's something like external audit.
Let's take the next one. This is an interesting one. How did the move to the cloud impact relationships at a company? Whether difficulties with people opposed to the new way of working. I can imagine you have a bunch of Sysops engineers who were used to work on a traditional setup, and they could be very opinionated.
And they left.
They left.
It's really
Yeah. I remember at my time at Skype, right? We also did a big migration from what was like a private custom cloud into Azure, and there were people who said, "Dude, no way, that's bullshit," and I'm gonna leave. And we said, "Okay." And you know what happened? Nothing.
We don't negotiate with terrorists, right? I mean, I'm serious. Like, this is childish, right? It's a business decision, not personal.
I think it's not only a business decision. It's actually about if you're in hybrid mode as we are, it's about converting your on-prem to a way it's usable as a cloud. And the second point is actually harder to find people who and still want to work with hardware. And I tend to believe that experience from top to bottom, like knowing the whole stack, in general brings you more expertise in-house.
Yeah, I think in general today, right? The world is changing so much that if you stick to a particular paradigm, you can't be any more successful. People need to be open-minded and say, okay, so how does, I don't know now, AI change my work, and how can I actually adopt it for my benefit and not be afraid of that? The same is with any sort of technology, I would say. Yeah, go on.
In Ataccama with security, it was really funny because security was used to be in charge of allowing new connections, opening new connections. But how do you do it in cloud when you have Terraform, you have guys with DevOps experience? and it was clash, and security was like, they cannot open the ports themselves. They cannot make the S3 bucket public. How would you do it? Would you introduce some approval mechanism in that? It was, wow, long story, but somehow they understand now and they like it. A couple of people left, of course, but now they like it.
Okay, next one. Next one. What have you gained and what have you lost during your migration to the cloud? Would you do something differently if you had to start your migration today?
I would say we gained better visibility. As I said, we gained a better user experience because now we are closer to our customers. We lost servers, which is okay. And I don't know. I think that we gained a new experience. Whole our engineering company here in Prague gained a huge experience running on cloud with all pros and cons. And I think that that's it. That people understand why we are doing it, and they are involved from the very beginning of the transition, which definitely helps to keep everyone on board. So.
I can maybe just briefly comment, like, in terms of make, right? Because, we made some mistakes, but one of them was that on the way to the cloud, we actually, from a true DevOps perspective, where basically somebody could deploy with a Git pull, we built silos on the way because, we thought, okay, there needs to be some governance, right? It's new and, it needs to be under control. So we built a DevOps silo, interestingly, and the process was more complicated. And we are now in a process of actually removing that and getting back to empowering the individual teams to be in control. And that is what I would have done differently if I saw that, right? So that's a great example of how you can go overboard with, thinking that you do something right, and then it blows back at you. Anton?
Yeah, our way, to comment on your point, our way of deployment, it doesn't change either we deploy on-prem or on cloud. It's the same. When it comes to cloud, I was thinking now that this may be comparable to learning a foreign language, right? So it's definitely a new experience. And do you necessarily need it? Well, you could live without it, right? So, but in the team, in terms of being interesting on the market, I would say having one of the clouds is probably a good idea. And also one thought, it depends, I think, on the size of the business. The bigger the business, the higher chances you're going to have at least one, if not two, clouds.
I was just quickly going to say that you gained mostly good line in your CV, in your resume.
Very pragmatic approach.
So thanks to clouds, we have more business because we have more customers. And also, if you are on the marketplace, your customer can buy your software and usually they have some commitments. And they use this commitment against our purchase.
So it's a new channel for you.
Yes, it's a new channel.
Yeah. One more, managed by AWS or self, which do you prefer? Do you trust the promise of the managed offer? So that would be typically, you choose a managed database, Aurora, against, your self-hosted Postgres, for example.
I'll just quickly say yes.
You do trust?
Yeah, of course.
Any particular reasons, or you just, that's basically because that's the promise of the platform?
Well, we don't really have bad experience with that, first to begin with. And second of all, I already mentioned it, it's cheaper to have somebody else manage some of parts of the stack for you instead of like hiring people left and right. I mean, I can just imagine that we have 200 databases. Like how many of DBAs would we have to be able to effectively manage that?
That makes sense.
And it's, it's much easier to have actually somebody else with many skills people, to manage it for us, because I believe they do a better job at it than we would.
In our case, every new customer means free clusters, Kubernetes, which scales quite like crazy. So today we have hundreds of Kubernetes clusters, and every service we can buy from AWS, it's better for us.
We have a similar approach. We actually even recently made it part of our engineering strategy that basically says we prefer software as a service and managed services before anything else that we self-host. And we also prefer to buy versus build for things that are commodity. and that are not related to our primary business. Because exactly, right? If you need a solution and you are not expert on that, you rather pay somebody who is an expert on that to do that for you. That at least something that works for us.
But it's quite difficult to find alternative on the second cloud provider.
I see.
Which makes everything.
And that's a very good remark, right? The cloud vendor lock-in. And I think that would be a great conversation over a beer. How do you actually, manage multi-cloud if you go with this policy of used managed services? Just a quick check. I see that we have spent 75 minutes talking. I see some people already being a little tired. Do you want to continue with a few more questions, or do you prefer we go have the food and the beers and then we discuss outside of this room? Who would like to continue with 2 more questions? That's a majority. Okay, let's do 2, and then we will go have fun. Okay, cool. That's a good one. Why does everyone hate Azure? But the question is whether that is true, because Milos said everybody hates Azure, and that's a manipulative technique, by the way.
It really boils down to like 90s and Microsoft and whatnot. Yeah, they changed a lot. I mean, it's like for the best. I mean, they are getting majorly better. But there is still like back in my head, there is still some hate for Microsoft.
Do they still rely in their IAM on Active Directory services? Like if you want to set up some permissions in cloud, you need to learn Active Directory, right?
Well, we already do use that because we have many, Windows laptops in house.
But I think you don't have any other choices, right?
Well, I don't know. Honestly, I'm not managing it. We have it connected to Okta somehow. I don't know how exactly, and everything is connected to Okta, so it's not a problem for us. But
in our case, I don't think we have emotion in that, right? It's more like we chose one that was AWS that worked for us. But actually, Azure is on the list because we need to do that to serve customers who have that requirement. So we are trying to kind of put emotion out of it because it's a pure business decision, and we may not like aspects of one or the other cloud provider, but it's like with everything, right? So take emotion out of it.
For us, we don't care a lot because our decision was driven by the locality, and actually. In Azure, we are running identity service, which is pretty awesome. So definitely there is nothing like Microsoft in or out.
Okay.
No. We hate Microsoft because we are an Apple-based company, and we've never liked them, and never used them, and never will be.
I worked at Microsoft and I use Apple all the time, and it was possible. Anyway, any closing thoughts before
I do have a couple more remarks. There are actually, this is kind of follow up to one of the further questions about the egress cost. There are some benefits to actually Azure. They have the local interconnect that is actually free, in terms of traffic. So they have good features. But I mean, if I have to choose between GCP or AWS or Azure, I'm not going to pick Azure.
Okay, cool. I promised 2 questions, but now the questions are gone. But there is a poll. So, if you would like to, tell us, what do you prefer? Are you on the team cloud or are you on team on-prem? Please go into Slido and, cast your vote. We would be curious to learn. So let's give it a few seconds.
Is there any in between?
Is there an in between?
Yep.
It's missing from the poll, right? I guess there is. There is a lot of opportunity for in between. Cool. Guys, before we adjourn and have more beer, what would you say is the top takeaway, or top few takeaways that you would want these people to take with them home and or back to their business when they are making decisions about cloud adoption or no cloud adoption? Is there anything that you think is so significantly important?
Let's start maybe. I personally believe that technical decisions should be justified economically, meaning your decision should be driven either cost saving, where time to market does more revenue. So think about how you would return your investment in 3 years.
Others?
I totally agree. I mean, it ultimately is not just technical decision, but it's, you know, it's specific to every use case. As I said before, you know, in some cases it definitely makes sense to stick with the bare metal. I can definitely imagine it with the GPUs. At some point, it's going to be challenging managing, you know, maybe 4 servers. Just kidding. But you know, definitely at some scale, it's going to be almost impossible. You'll have to have full team, which also incurs some cost, and you have to do your math correctly.
Mm-hmm. Martina, yes.
I would just say that it's, you know, you need to really predict in a short term, in the midterm, in long term, what your resources will be, what your spending will be, and after that you need to accommodate like the business. Yeah. So again, and I said at the very beginning that there is no definitive answer. What's better? The better is what's better for your business.
Mm-hmm.
I would say don't go to cloud just because it's fancy. But if you go take the vendors, the AWS and Azure as a friend and partner, because they can help you, and especially if you are a software vendor or service vendor, you can do these cross-sell activities, this marketing together. You can go to their conferences. You can really do business with them,
mm-hmm.
and they can help you because you pay to them, and they can help you to bring new customers so that you pay more.
So partnerships, that's probably not for everybody. I can imagine that, you know, if you are a small startup, maybe a partnership is out of your league, but once you grow, that makes sense. Honzo, anything from you?
And I would say cloud is fun, but be aware that there are lions waiting for you. So be ready.
Cool. I would wrap up with saying that, you know, it's not a silver bullet. It's an amazing tool, but if you go there, make sure that everybody on the team is part of the game. Don't build silos. Don't build teams that specialize on that. Try to plug every developer into that so that they understand what does it mean from the architectural perspective. What does it mean to run, you know, workloads in the cloud? Because that's going to help you with agility. Awesome. So that is that. Now we have results from the poll. Thank you, Nastya, for including the hybrid option very quickly. And as we see, Team Cloud 58%, hybrid 37%, and Team On-Prem only 5%. So thanks a lot. Great material for discussion over a beer. I would like to thank our panelists for your great insights. Martin Damovsky.
Thank you.
Anton Getmanchuk, Martin Možnar, Jan Šimak.
Thanks for having me.
And Miloš Vyletěl. Thanks a lot. And thank you for your attention and for great questions. Let's go have some fun.